What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Jerry Sly. Once again, back to slide on a topic. We got a video on feedback. 10's Best Alien by Tyler. You notice the dog. Always got great and kind of fascinating videos about like things like cartoons from my childhood and like comics and media. So it's the type of channel. If this type of channel you'd be interested in, I think y'all subscribe to my dog. He's on the way to 60K. Before we get started, you gotta like the vid. You know what I'm saying? You got 24 hours to do 3 good deeds. One of those can be commenting to help build the community. Another can be joining the Discord link in the description to join the com. But yeah, make sure I got some water. Y'all eating good, y'all sleeping good. But I'm trying to dig in. So without further ado, let's get into the video.
Ben 10 Omniverse borderline destroyed what made Ben 10 so special. However, I cannot sit here and say that it is a 0 out of 10 and complete garbage. Why? Because of feedback. Not only is feedback a top 3 alien of mine, but it has...
This is a top 5 alien of mine as well. Before we get started, I'll address I may be a bit biased toward feedback, but also I'm not the most this is like when I was a child. I'm not the most well versed, so I'll try to be as unbiased as possible. If he's bringing up like points on why he's the best,
one of arguably the best storylines in the entire story. That being, of course, the feedback/malware saga. Aside from Accelerate and Diamond Head, feedback is probably my favorite alien, so I might be a little biased. But I also think malware was one of the better villains introduced into Omniverse until he overstayed his welcome, but that's another discussion.
See, he brought up the bias. This is why we respect content creators that can make unbiased, kind of unfiltered, very authentic content. It's always best to consume content like that as opposed to like run of the mill. You see this every day. I'm trying to fit a mold type of content
for another time. Anyway, let's dive into the story of Ben's old favorite alien, that being Feedback. Feedback, for a brief summary, is a conductoid alien that is capable of absorbing electricity and
Bro said conductoid.
energy as a whole. It seemed like he was originally electric based, but then he just kind of became Chromastone's cooler sibling. Think of Bro as Don from regular show, while Chromastone is Rigby. Now, before anything, I have to clear up a big misconception about Feedback before I dive into his story. Feedback was not an alien that got put into the classic series and didn't contradict the series necessarily. Ben found Feedback sometime after the original, as we know he removed the Omnitrix when he was 11. Meaning, even after all the events that Ben went through, he still never really had a personal favorite alien. The closest I could think of are like Diamond Head, Forearms, and maybe He-Blast. So Feedback was an alien.
Random stat, I do know at the end of the series, he used Humongous for like 89 times total.
That Ben for some reason felt the closest to. It was almost like he embraced the Ben aspect of Ben 10. What this means is anytime he's Feedback, we see him embracing the cockiness and arrogance he had as a child, which at the time Ben didn't notice was a bad thing until coming into contact with Malware. Malware was an incomplete and mutated galvanic mechamorph, an alien race that Ben does have access to. The Galvans were a race that evolved before Asmus Eyes when he was trying to inhabit what would eventually become Galvan B, or Malware's homeworld. It's important to know how Malware, in contrast to his own race ever evolving, was someone derailing into darkness due to his genetic code messing up. Pretty much deemed him as a failure, so for revenge he tried feeling complete by taking his greatest invention, that being the Omnitrix. Which, of course...
It's a really good plot line. And Ben 10, I'm not going to say all the time, but, well, let's say in all works in media, there's like this aspect of like punching and kicking, shallow villains that are just fighting to fight, but that backstory and being linked to Asmuth himself ties it to Ben and allows Ben to do one of the things it does really well and allow you to look at choices, why they're important, how in some aspects they define you, and in others you don't need to let them define you and you can choose who you are. Benton is really good at, pushing a message and inviting deeper reflection. And of course, if you just love cool aliens, you'll love Ben 10.
Leads into him meeting Ben Tennyson. During their squabbles that would eventually lead into this moment, the only alien Ben could defeat him with was Diamond Head. But of course, Diamond Head isn't Ben's go-to choice for the situation, it's feedback. And so Ben, when using the alien that he feels the most a part of, he gets it ripped away right before his very eyes from someone who never even got to understand himself. I think you could jot this up to evil guy laughing at fallen hero and Mauer being a menace, but I believe it's a little deeper than that. Mauer was genetically coded as an incomplete failure, which is why he takes so much pleasure in ripping away the one alien that Ben feels the most complete with. It's almost like Mauer is getting revenge on Azimuth in a way by ripping his successor's perfection to make up for his own imperfections. As we know, Ben would manage to overload Mauer, where he'd seemingly be gone forever, along with feedback. But of course, we know that Mauer would survive, and he would swear revenge on Ben Tennyson. Now, Ben in the show gets a lot of flack for being immature, which I am definitely in agreement of to an extent. But if I'm being honest, they did a great job by making Ben learn the consequences of picking one alien, which is why we see later on in the series Ben not going just
More
Alien X
versatile.
or way big to go and slam the verse. As he said in Alien Force, he's got 9 other guys that can do it better, or in this case, like over 70.
That joint peak. It was like, oh, we're not gonna handle that. Why I need Alien X? I got 9 of the guys that can do it. Like, bro, Ben got one of the greatest auras of all time. Not gonna lie, he sells at some points, but he be bagging shorties. He be kicking butt and taking names. And on top of that, the CIA, instead of like they were trying to like kidnap him or something, but instead of doing that, they were like, "Could you please come with us, Mr. Tennyson?" You got the CIA putting respect on your name. Come on, bro, that's aura.
Something. It's also important to know how Azimuth deemed Mauer as a failure upon creation, yet was proven wrong by Ben to be a failure. While the Omnitrix is something that wasn't meant for Ben, Azimuth knows it ended.
That's also peak because Ben sees himself as a failure from the beginning, and he evolves into like peak. It's also an interesting theory that like the Omnitrix turns you to the peak specimen of any race with the DNA. Ben doesn't, when he like de-transforms, he's not de-transforming, he's transforming back into a human. So like I've seen like the take that he is peak human, and I think that's a very tough concept. So I like that as a peak human, he even as that is still flawed and it has to grow because that's what humanity is, evolution. So the peak of humanity is someone with space to grow, not someone who just is a master of everything just like that. And it allows Azimuth to right his wrong by having to put his faith in Ben, an imperfect or incomplete individual, and it gives perfect closing to the thematical connections and dichotomies between Ben and Mauer.
Ended up in the right hands, which leads into the two actually growing a liking to one another, and Azimuth respecting him unlike his own creation. Which, in all honesty, is probably why Mauer takes so much pleasure in ripping away feedback from Ben. Now, we wouldn't see Mauer again until Ben is much older, where we see over the next 5 years he forms an allegiance with Kyber and Dr. Psychobos. He would help them create the Nematrix, which is a Dollar General Omnitrix for evil people, and these two would encounter one another very briefly before he'd go on to invade Azimuth's homeworld to bring him down along with Ben 10. Now, originally, Mauer was somebody who wanted to spite Azimuth, but due to Ben's influence, Mauer spiraled even more, and now he just wants to straight up murder this child along with his father. To simplify Mauer and what he represents, at least in his initial appearances, he's a failed experiment that tried to achieve completion, only to then end up as a shell of his former self. Now yes, Omniverse is definitely the worst show out of the original continuity, but it at least shows that in this arc they at least cared for this part of the plot. Anyway, Ben, when facing Mauer once again, tries to go blow.
I've heard that often. Like a lot of people don't mess with Omniverse. I like the animation and like some of the story aspects, but ultimately, see what I did there? Ultimate Alien is I think they're with like the trio. I think it's there with like giving the fans exactly what they're looking for and exploring those deeper questions and diving deeper into I'm maturing and I'm Ben 10. I'm not just Ben Tennyson. from then. I'm Ben Tennyson, who's growing as a hero.
Blow for blow with his go-to strongest, that being way big. However, we'd see Malware overwhelm him, leading into Ben nearly being absorbed. All hope seems lost for our hero until we see a younger Ben interacting with the older one. We'd see how he felt guilty for what happened with feedback, but the older Ben would tell him to forgive himself for what happened. A lot of people see this moment as BS, but there are some personal theories that I've seen within the community that actually make this scene a lot more interesting. The main theory being that Ben in fact already did have feedback. He learned to never use that alien again, so it's more than likely he chose to not use conductoid DNA. Ben probably had so much guilt within himself that he never showed it to anyone but himself. But in this moment, Ben decides to forgive himself, and then we see feedback rise once again. He'd go on to fight Malware without having anything holding him back this time. And I'm not gonna lie, this is probably top 5 fights in all of Omniverse. He'd approach Bro like an Elden Ring boss, throwing dodge rolls at his punches and using it as a way to land on his arm and then blast him in the face. Malware would get jumped, but he knows that this isn't JJK, and he would immediately slam the other Galvans. This then leads into Malware and Feedback getting into a sparking zero beam clash where Feedback wins with quite literally zero effort and brings down Malware. Malware was seemingly destroyed for the time being, and Feedback was back in Ben's arsenal.
Feedback is one strong dreadhead, bro.
And anytime Ben would go on to use him again, he would not disappoint the viewers, with him even being the one alien that holds and absorbs a Big Bang. For reference, this is not just a regular Big Bang that birthed the universe. No, this is a Big Bang that was going to threaten 5th dimensional beings and threaten the universe that holds over 17 dimensions. Meaning, yes, if Goku shot a Kamehameha at my goat, Feedback is absorbing that shit, throwing it back with even more power, and turning Bro into bacon. Feedback not only is going down as one of Ben's strongest aliens, but in terms of ace aliens, he's by far my favorite besides maybe Way Big, who may or may not get a dedicated video related in the future. And if you want any more specific scaling related to Feedback, you guys can go and check out my Ben 10 vs Big 3 video. But as far as other aliens that I may have not talked about yet, and if you guys want me to go in depth with not only their power scaling but also their narrative in the Ben 10 universe, then be sure to share this video with your friends and your grandma, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
My grandma. That was an excellent video. Smaller video than I realized, but that was an excellent video by the boy Ty Learned. Feedback, Ben 10's best alien. Excellent video. I love the idea that not everyone forgets that a character has a narrative behind them, and that understanding that can bring more enjoyment to the show and a better understanding to the character rather than just power. But I like that he discusses both and doesn't have as many leaps in logic as some other people tend to have. But that'll be all for my reaction. Make sure when you subscribe and follow that you turn on notifications so you don't miss a stream and you don't miss the movement. Same way I have my bell hit for my dog Ty Learned. Make sure y'all boys like and comment. Y'all got 24 hours to do 3 good deeds. Link to the Discord is in the bio. As always, make sure y'all grab y'all a handful of grass and get y'all some sun. I love you all consensually, and peace.